Sweet. Man, the sky, I actually really like rainy days in May.
Yeah,
because
I do too. I like rainy days, period.
I don't like the white light in the middle of the day. I don't like that light. That light makes me sleepy. It makes me want to quit my job. But the yellow light in the morning or the evenings, like, I could work a prairie for hours.
Hour.
Yeah, but when you add a bunch of clouds, it's like blue light. It's like wonderful.
Yeah. Riley, if you could create, like, so just taking what Nick said, and I assume you're in agreement with him, I'm in agreement with him. Design for us, go, you don't have to go hour by hour, but kind of general blocks of hours, what a good old-fashioned workday would be like. That included outdoor labor.
Oh, I would say like a good old-fashioned schedule, like starts at like 5 or 6, runs until 9, break for a slice of pie or something like that. Then you run till like 11, and then from 11 to like 2, you're eating / not on fire.
Sleeping.
Sleeping, something like that. And then I'd say like 3 to like maybe 7, you pick back up. That's like a country schedule to me. Like an old,
that sounds good.
Old farming schedule.
My midday would maybe push back an hour. I'd work till noon, and then I wouldn't come back out until like 4.
Yeah. 4? And then what, 4 to 6 or 6:30?
No, till like 8. Because
really?
Because this time of year it's light out till 8:30.
Yeah.
But I mean, from 1 till 4 o'clock, it gets pretty dang hot.
Right now in May, you can work straight through.
Oh yeah,
you know what I mean. But you hit June, that does sound nice. June and July, first half of August, brutal. Absolutely brutal.
And I think midday naps need to be like reinstitutionalized.
I was telling my mom that the other day, and she laughed in my face. And now, to be fair, she's like a little bit of a workaholic, and she was like, "You can't just take a break in the middle of the day." And I was like, "I think 11 to 2 should just in the summers, you should just 11 to 2, not be awake or not."
Yeah, but you'd have to be disciplined. You couldn't just be like, "Oh, phone time." You know what I mean? Or
you'd
TV
have to
time. It needs to be like going to sleep, taking a good nap.
I think people think they're resting sometimes when they are, in fact, not resting at all. And like Netflix, people veg out all day on a show on Netflix and be like, "Man, I rested." I'm like, actually, that was terrible for you and your body.
I'm gonna turn it I used to have this student who had this shirt. Shout out to Mike. He's hilarious. My first year of teaching. He had this shirt, and in Netflix font, it just said, "I do marathons."
Man. Welcome back to the Prairie Farm Podcast, Coffee Time Wednesday. I'm your favorite host, Nicholas Leary, with your favorite co-host, Ken Boucher.
Hey.
And your favorite co-host to the co-host, Riley Rosendahl.
What's going on?
Whoa, slow down, Riley. It's not your show.
Yeah. Taking over the show here.
Man, well, I mean, you could. It's your time to shine. I don't know if you guys know this, but on a percentage of things said, Riley is by far the most funny of us, which I think hurts me and Kent's feelings. But the deal is that Kent and I say so many things that
eventually we get there.
Yeah, like there's only so many
it's a
combinations.
shotgun approach to humor.
Man, it is a great approach. We live a wonderful life, and Riley is like the pepperoni to our cheese pizza. Cheese pizza, like, okay, yeah, we like that pizza. Pepperoni's like, way better.
Yeah, that's an upgrade.
That's a lot of pressure right there. Now, like every word has to be up there.
Premium.
I've always felt that
just be yourself.
People order a cheese pizza, they're ripping themselves off because, man, just pull the sausage off or pull the pepperonis off, and you still got your cheese pizza, but you paid for less when you get a cheese pizza.
I imagine
you paid the same for less product.
Kent just buying a sausage pizza, picking all the sausage off, and putting it in like a little Tupperware container for later.
We'll save that for a sandwich later.
That's a Dutchman.
That's about what some of his lunches are.
That's a Dutchman's logic right there.
Hey, you can't, waste not, want not.
Spend a half hour picking at sausage.
My wife and I have been working really hard about not wasting food that goes in our fridge. And it's harder than it seems with only 2 people, because it's hard to buy quantities of any sort of like efficient cost for only 2 people.
Right.
So you buy for like 6 people and you're like, oh, I'll make 1 meal now and I'll make 1 meal later. And then you just do not come back.
They're
to that
having
later.
like poblano peppers stuffed with peanut butter.
Gross.
Eat it all.
Dude, that is something about Dad. I mean, it is a superpower of his. It doesn't matter what was on his plate. He will scrape all of it to the middle and just finish it off. It does not matter.
That is a Dutch thing.
Oh, gross.
Clean
For
plate.
sure.
You gotta have a clean plate.
Yep.
Man, for anyone who thinks we're a little racist against Dutch people, it's because everybody in our area is Dutch. And if you want to know why, you can go back just a couple episodes. We did a whole thing about the founding of this area.
Do you have any Dutch heritage?
They think so. I'm mostly Irish and I think Jewish on the white half of me. The other half is
I have
Filipino.
a lot of Dutch, and Riley definitely.
I'm like all Dutch.
Yeah, dude. He's like 99.9%. The only the 0.1% was just error, just rounding error.
Like a Dutch letter.
We like trace him all the way back. He doesn't even go back to Adam and Eve. He just goes back to the first Dutchman. And that's the end of his line.
Oh man, Luke Fritsch had a great quote about Adam and Eve this weekend that I have to tell you later. I will not say it on the podcast.
What? You just gonna talk to everybody?
Well, they can write in if they want to hear it. They can send me a message and I'll tell it to them.
All right. Well, we've got a little different format. We're not doing a question today. We've got great questions on the docket, but way too much going on. No way we could keep it to less than 35, 40 minutes if we were also having one of the great questions get answered. So we're skipping the question. We'll be right back next week. If you want your question answered, you will get free seed if we answer it. social@theprairiefarm.com. social@theprairiefarm.com. If you send us a message on Instagram, honestly, just 50-50 that we'll see it. So we get a lot of messages on Instagram and we've got other places we're looking. So social@theprairiefarm.com. And for now, I think, Riley, you're first.
Yeah. I'm bringing a topic that's from a couple days ago, May 16, actually. I'm guessing some people might have seen it on social media, but there were some wild videos and then articles that followed on a serious dust storm that impacted the eastern half of Illinois and actually blew into Chicago proper, pretty much almost obscuring the entire skyline.
Man.
I would say it swept across a large portion of the central part of the state up to Chicago. Yeah.
Crazy.
And the research I did was through the National Weather Service. They actually wrote up a little kind of weather event synopsis, and they basically said that the cause of this was the winds coming off a severe thunderstorm, which ended up creating like these 70 plus mile an hour wind gusts that picked up all this material dust that was topsoil. Yep. Right off of spring planting. There's a lot of that around. We've seen it in the past, like in South Dakota. Illinois had a bad pileup a couple years back due to this dust. But there was just, you can't even see. You can't see anything. The videos are like terrifying.
Yeah.
Really?
It gave me big vibes back to a Ken Burns documentary I'd watched on the Dust Bowl. Where they're describing wearing handkerchiefs over their face. And
that was a great documentary. I watched it in like 5th or 6th grade or so, way back when, and I still vividly remember clips from it.
It is, however bad you think the Dust Bowl was, it's way worse than what you remember, unless you've really recently read about it or done a deep dive on it. It's just unimaginable how bad that disaster was.
Is that the only quote unquote famine the United States has ever gone through? Because that was a common term way back when. It was like, oh, there was a famine.
Probably in recorded American history, I would say.
Interesting.
There's some interesting stuff that went on during the Little Ice Age, I would imagine. But I don't know how much record we have of that. And then also there was a major volcanic eruption in the early 1800s, Mount Tambora. And there was so much ash put out by that volcanic eruption that there was some serious shading for like over a year, all around the globe, and it was snowing in New England in July that year, and there was some major crop failures.
Wow.
Because of everything caused by that. But as far as other famine events, I don't really know of many others. But yeah, it was. I mean, I used to think if you've ever seen, man, we talk about Mad Max and SpongeBob a lot on here. If you've ever seen,
We do not. Ken talks about them a lot.
What else do you need? Mad Max Fury Road. There's a scene in there where they're all riding off across the wasteland, and a dust storm kicks up, and you see all this electricity sparking in the sky. And I always thought that was so stupid. It's like, come on, what lightning? What does dust cause lightning now?
Yeah.
And the answer is kind of.
Yeah.
There's so much static electricity because of all the particulate in the air that there's literally crackling electricity everywhere, so much so that it would stall people's cars during the Dust Bowl.
Wow.
And then they would be in serious danger to getting stuck in that dust storm and breathing in all this dust and possibly killing them.
Wasn't that in Interstellar? That was kind of the issue with like the Earth's kind of failing, and
there were dust storms, and then there was also some sort of fungal disease that was affecting crops as well.
Interesting.
So it was a combination of adverse weather effects and infections.
The way that I
Go
see
read
it,
The Worst Hard Time by Timothy Egan.
yeah,
It'll open your eyes, or listen to it.
one of the way that I see it is, and I've talked about it like this before, right? The Jenga piece, you can only take a certain amount of piece, but every time there's pressure, like for some reason that year's a lot hotter, or that year's a lot colder, or fungal infection sweeps through, or there's several other things going on, then every time something like that happens, it puts pressure on the Jenga puzzle.
Yep.
And as long as you got all your pieces fit in there, then the pieces can hold that pressure, right? They can hold the weight. It can withstand it. But if you take out a bunch of the pieces and then you put that pressure on top, that's more likely what would cause that. It would be the removing of our biodiversity plus some sort of great pressure that, like, imagine if something that killed all brome just swept through Iowa.
Yeah.
Like how detrimental, and we don't even like brome, but how detrimental that would be to Iowa, because that's like the green that's left.
Yeah, there'd be a lot of open dirt. Yeah,
It'd be terrible. But so what caused this dust storm? I guess I did.
There was wind coming off of the severe thunderstorm system that was pushing through northern Iowa and Illinois, and it was basically creating these extremely strong gusts that were able to lift this dust and topsoil off of the ground and make it airborne.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I kind of view a dust storm as you have two parts, right? You have your regular weather, severe weather events that happen periodically, right? But then you have this set table that's ready to be, the dust that provides the dust, which, as Riley mentioned, we're coming out of planting season. A lot of soil's getting moved and opened. Even with no-till planters, there's still some cutting of the soil, and you just don't have plants growing in that soil yet either to help anchor it down. And so a lot of cover crops getting killed off right now with herbicide as guys are having their crops sprout and grow to not suck moisture away from the crop. So the table was set. And the other part of that is we're really, now thankfully it's raining right now. Hopefully you can hear some of this prairie thunder in the background. But we're kind of flirting with a fifth year of drought right now. It's been a pretty dry spring. And so dry conditions. And like Riley said, the storm system that rolled through.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, it makes you think like the impact of every year taking out 5 acres of this and 5 acres of that. It builds. All after
Absolutely.
the Dust Bowl, there were programs to push contouring, to push terracing, to push drainage, all these different
Shelter
things.
belt plantings.
Yes.
That was a big one.
And pasture was still a large portion of our agricultural system, but every year we slip a little bit closer to, these 10,000 acre fields that are just flat, wide open, and prepped for planting. That's a lot of dust.
Yeah. And it seems like with a lot of these events, there's a critical mass point where once you cross a threshold, now is when the dominoes start falling.
Yeah.
You know, whereas there was kind of still able to sustain it up until you hit that critical mass point, and then there's this big cascade. And so I don't think that we're there yet. However, I'd say these are the symptoms of getting awful close.
Yeah. It is kind of interesting because people are, I mean, it's taken 4 years, but it's been really dry recently, you know, instead of just a year or two cycle. But I'm hoping that we're just in part of a cycle where we'll look back and be like, yeah, those were the driest 5 years we had in the last 50.
Yeah.
You know, I'd love for that to be the case.
Yeah.
But not a meteorologist. Speaking of which, if you guys know a meteorologist, I'm having a really hard time getting a hold of one. And we need to talk to one. I think you guys agree we need to talk to one. So,
or a climatologist might even be.
Might be better.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Well, thanks, Riley. It was pretty pressing. It felt like a big deal, and it feels like kind of a wake-up call. And I mean, this is the second year in a row, Illinois, but the other one was caused just by great wind.
I think the other one was 2 years ago.
Was it 2 years ago?
Still pretty recent.
But it was it was just like one farmer was tilling, right? And then it swept across the interstate was the big thing. It wasn't statewide.
It definitely wasn't statewide. It was a much smaller area, yeah.
But we got some red dust from like Oklahoma and Iowa.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
A month and a half ago.
When we had another, I think was that one determined to be a small derecho? I can't remember.
I don't know. They all run together. One bad weather event after another.
Yeah,
it's hard to tell. Well, I'm next. CRP is open, and can't miss out on that one. CRP is open. It's open for enrollment, both general and continuous. I believe Grassland is going to be open as well, but general and continuous are the big ones that we talk about. So, Conservation Reserve Program, where the government, some people say it very poorly. They say the government pays farmers to not farm. That's not what's happening. The government is paying farmers to protect public resources like water, soil, or even air quality. But the big one then would be habitat for wildlife. So that is open. 27 million acres are allowed to be in CRP. Right now, we're at a little under 26. So they open...
I think it was 1.8 million that they opened.
That was the figure I saw,
1.8, because that pushes us up to our total amount. Yes. But it is really encouraging to see that it's open. It opened, I believe, exactly a week ago on May 12th, and it is open until, I believe it closes June 6th. I don't know if that means you can all the way through June 6th or you need to be in before June 6th. The point being, if you have some acres that would qualify for CRP and you're tired of losing money on corn or beans or working really hard so that someone else can make that money, CRP would be a good viable option. Also a very good option for wildlife and other ecological pillars. But I do think that the CRP opening, I couldn't figure out what the heck was going on there. So I read straight from the FSA.USDA.gov is where I got the information. And I wasn't totally sure where the it kind of seemed like there was going to be no CRP, and I don't know who makes the final say, right? Like we could talk about Doge axed it. I don't know if they actually did. I don't know why it hasn't been open until now.
They didn't axe CRP. Everything just kind of got frozen for
and then slowly unfrozen.
There was a freeze put on, I think, all USDA grants,
equip money, CSP. Yeah, everything was.
It wasn't like a targeted CRP, you know.
Okay, that's what I've been trying to figure out. I was like, why is it delayed? How much is open? Are we going to extend it even further? Although I do think, maybe a hot take for conservationists, I think we need to start putting some money into maintaining better. We need to put some resources into maintain, because some people do an incredible job. I've talked to hundreds, if not thousands of them. Props to you guys. And I've talked to people, frankly, they don't give a rip. They want their payment. They're going to throw the seed out there. You know, they don't care when the seed goes out. They're not worried. They bare minimum on what they need to do to get there. I'm not saying those people don't need to do it. I'd rather see a crappy stand than no stand at all. Mm-hmm. But I think we need to put some effort into because we're now 50 years into kind of the set aside program and 30-ish years into the prairie part of planting CRP, and it started terribly. I mean, my My dad's first CRP planting down the road was big blue stem and round-headed bush clover. Like there was nothing in, it's a far cry. Now that field is still there today, still dominant big blue stem and round-headed bush clover, tons of wildlife in there. Yep. But there's a big gap between where it could be. And so, and so we're 30 years in, we've learned a lot. I mean, something you see on a lot of these continuous acres, you see a lot of trees in there. You see just things that we have enough information to address now. But just because you know how to address it doesn't mean you have the resources to address it. I don't have a proposed solution. I just think we should be doing something about the maintenance. I think maintenance, like people were disking in the middle of their contract for a while, and that was kind of recommended. It's a terrible idea.
Go listen to our recent conversation with Pete Berthelsen. You can hear all about why that came to be.
Or even, not the disking, but we talk a lot about burning with Ryan Kurtz. That was a great conversation. But there's some management practices that are coming along, but they could use a federal push, on the CRP. So even with continuous CRP, they're treating it less as where can they get the most acres. That's how they've been doing it in the past. And now they're ranking it where can they have the most effect. So they're trying to be a little more intentional because they are running up on that cap.
That's what you were asking for.
Yeah, that is exactly what
not exactly. You'd love to see more money given to those most needy acres.
Yeah, that's true. Well, now, I mean, there's just not enough.
Halfway there is good, though.
Yeah, I think it's a step thinking in the right direction.
Yes.
And vetting things. So now on a boots on the ground level, the wildlife biologists, the DCs in every county, they're able to think, where am I they're practicing the brain's exercise of where am I having the most impact. And then if we can push that and we're able to see, hey, this actually does better anyway than just putting a whole 140 acre, 160 acre into CRP, and just letting it be grassland with little management. I think if they're able to see the difference on that, see those results over the next 4 to 10 years, I do think we'll start pushing in that direction where it's a weighted scale on how much you get paid, which it is a little bit now, but I think it could be hugely weighted where it's like, oh, you're next to water, you get a lot of money for being right next to water. And those kinds of things. But
basically make it so that there's no way none of those most needy acres are not covered.
Oh, you guys hear that?
That's quite a bolt of lightning over there. I think if I was working in the Canada Anemone, my hair would be standing up right now.
We've got the doors open. It's actually really beautiful out there. But the sky's like just a wonderful gray. Yeah.
No shovel work today.
Send the newbie out there. Home now.
Oh man! All right. Well, that's what I got. Kent is bringing us in with some closer.
Yeah, another thing that's been big in the news here lately, and we run the risk when we have a podcast that has grown to the size that it has. There's an expectation that you cover important stuff, and so we have not been ignoring the public land news here as of late. We've just been trying to make sure we do a good job talking about it. And so had a rainy day today. I was able to sit down and collect my thoughts and do some reading and get some details down on paper. But as of I think it was last week now already, there was a midnight decision by a subcommittee, the House Subcommittee for Natural Resources.
Not quite midnight, because that would have been illegal.
A few minutes before 11, like 11 p.m. literally, while they were working through other I guess proposed legislation, it was worked in at the last second by House Representative. I think you pronounce his last name Omedi. From Nevada, and it was proposed that Nevada and Utah be able collectively, so this isn't a total for each state, this is collectively, be able to sell roughly, they wouldn't be able to sell it. the federal government would be able to sell 460,000 acres found in between their states, right? Some in Utah, and the vast majority of it in Nevada. And that's a big deal. When you look at what does our country own that has value, well, there's all sorts of different things. I don't understand all of it. I'm sure some of it is, financial stuff like stocks and bonds and things. There's also, of course, any kind of government equipment, property. Think of our military and those resources, right? Things that you keep on the shelf or in the parking lot. But then there's also land, and land really represents, and it has for basically ever since ownership came into existence, property ownership represents one of the biggest potential, what's the right term? Future value, I guess. Now, of course, we know some land, if you could own 1,000 acres in the Sahara Desert, and, it'd be pretty hard to see what the potential is there, but you never know. You might strike oil. It's one of the best forms of wealth to have, though, right, is land. And as a citizen of America, we get to access that land. And something that I've said on this podcast for a long time is that going and enjoying our public land, for me, it's usually through hunting or fishing.
I know Riley's been hitting Area 51.
Yeah,
it's a public land.
Just
looking through things,
Yeah.
Doing a tour.
Yeah,
FBI, please don't come to my house.
Some of the aircraft. That's But it's one of our biggest expressions of freedom to be able to do that, to just go out on land and participate in almost an unlimited number of different activities that you could do. I've had it where I've been elk hunting and people are parachuting above me, getting dropped out of airplanes. I've had people fly over in little ultralights. I've fished on public land. I've backpacked. I've canoed. I've done all sorts of things, built fires, just going out and building a fire. A lot of you that live in town, you can't do that. But on public land, you're allowed to just enjoy all these freedoms, or even going bird watching, or a lot of people like you think of down in Arkansas, where they have that Diamond National Park or something like that. You're allowed to go and just try to find a diamond, and you're allowed to take it home with you. In fact, I think there was a guy this year who found like a 3-carat diamond.
Crazy.
Down in Arkansas. There's just a whole host of things that we're allowed to do on public land, but it also, from outside of a recreation standpoint, represents and for lack of a better term, untapped source of potential wealth, right? Things get bad for our nation, we could always go drilling for oil. If things get bad for our nation, we could always go looking for other minerals that we might need, right? Or timber, or all sorts of things, right? It represents a potential resource if it were needed. Now, defining when something is needed is where a lot of the controversy has been around public land lately. We had a great conversation about this with Nick Larson, I believe is who it was. That'll be coming out on a podcast here soon.
Aaron Warburton.
Yeah, but we also talked about it with Nick, I think.
Oh, did we? Yeah.
So determining when is need and when is want is a big difference.
Yeah.
Another good reason to read The Worst Hard Time, where you can hear about people using the upholstery of their old vehicles, their junk vehicles, to make a new set of clothes for themselves. I think that helps us redefine want versus need.
Yeah.
Or this one kid who told the newspaper that his family takes turns eating supper each night of the week. I think that helps tell you want versus need. But anyways, for this issue, we're mostly looking at the fact that 460,000 acres by this subcommittee has been approved And the way I understand this is it has to pass a couple things yet. It's got to go through NEPA, which is the National Environmental Policy Act, to be reviewed for an environmental impact statement. If we sell off these lands to private entities, will everyone's water turn black, and will people die of stomach cancer from drinking out of their tap water? That kind of thing. Obviously, that's exaggerated. But there's there's a reviewing process, which I'm thankful to hear about, right? But then I believe it would also. So this doesn't mean that, as far as I understand, this doesn't mean that it's not that it's approved by the House. Now it just needs Senate and executive approval, and boom, it's law. 460,000 acres up for sale. I think the rest of the House of Representatives would have to vote in favor of its sale. Then the Senate, then the president, I believe, is how that would break down. So it's not a done deal, which is why it's incredibly important to learn about it right now, what's going on. So where is this land? How and what's it going to be used for? Most of it is in Nevada. I went on to Representative Amodi, however you say his name, his official website for being a representative. And from there, as best I can understand, about 449 and some change thousand acres of it would go up for sale in Nevada, and then about 10,000 would go up for sale in Utah. Nevada would like to sell a lot of it around fast-growing urban areas that they feel their growth is limited by it runs into, hey, we would build an extra housing development there, but there's federal land right there, and so nobody can build there. They feel that these fast-growing communities are held back by this federal land being there. So that would be part of it. Approximately, and this is from the APnews.com, an article titled "A Republican Push to Sell Public Lands in the West is Reigniting a Political Fight." It's by Matthew Brown, Jesse Bedane, and Matthew Daly. And according to that article, they said about 100,000 in western Nevada would be sold to private mining companies.
Wow.
So they would have.
Oh, so Nevada and New Mexico have already said, like, this is what
Nevada
we're
and Utah.
Nevada and Utah.
Yeah,
Sorry,
they've already said this is what we would use this land for.
Okay. Well, I'm glad. I mean, not that I want that to go to mining, private mining companies, but I'm glad at least they were, transparent enough to be like, hey, this is what we would do with it.
Yeah.
That way we can make a good decision, and yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So that's the main breakdown. Those two sources. I'll read a quote here from Representative Modi here in a second, and then the other, and that would be in western Nevada where that mining would likely take place, and then Utah, it was pretty much all housing and water reservoir expansion, and again that was 10,000 acres, and it would be in about 2 counties there in Utah. And so that's what they're looking at this land and wanting to do with it. I do want to say that there are some cases where we own public land. I just heard of one recently. I was listening to a Meat Eater episode, and they had I think he's the governor of Montana, I want to say, Sheehy. I could be wrong on that. It might be a senator. I don't remember. He talked about examples of old military bases that no one's allowed on because, hazardous material or something. Or there's a warehouse in Indiana that the government doesn't do anything with, and it's in an urban neighborhood, like it's in Gary, Indiana or something, and nothing happens with it. It just sits there. I am a big believer in the slippery slope not being so much of a fallacy. I think that a lot of times once the cookie starts crumbling, it keeps crumbling. So it makes me leery. But in that case, I can understand the logic behind those cases.
We had that just in my hometown. The current mayor, who I am a very large fan of, Brian Hatch, he ran on hey, so there was this giant VA veterans hospital. It's huge, and it serviced tons of veterans from all over the United States in this small little town. Lots of doctors, lots of nurses. Well, then the government pulled out of it and just left. I mean, like a college campus, huge,
Yeah.
just left it vacant for like 2 decades. And so his whole running point was, we need to do something with that land. And they had, I mean, it was a nightmare. It took like 3 years for the federal government. It had to like be transferred to another agency that was allowed to sell it. And then they were able to sell it to the county. And then the county ended up selling it, ended up helping the city develop that area. That is a very specific, very nuanced like land that was sold that I would argue in every way was good.
Yeah.
I'm around it now. It's good. It's been good for people. There's a cool park there. Like it's just a good thing that they did. But so I don't want to say selling land is always bad or the government should never sell any land. But I'm the first to admit that of the acres that are proposed to be sold, that is a tiny
Right.
percentage of
Right.
it.
Right. Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. It's a great example. And there's logic there, right? But I would say that those are the rare, like you said, the tiny percentage of cases. And once you start humans have this propensity when we sniff out a resource, we don't say, "Wow, that was a great snack. I'll never have that ever again."
We're proof of that.
Yeah, we exploit it and we go back to it, and so that's what scares me to death on it. It was interesting this article from AP. They interviewed some people associated with the Paiute Nation, and there's a couple. I believe it was 2 Paiute reservations that border some of these proposed federal lands, and to them it's a threat that, hey, now all of a sudden, we can't expand our reservation there as of now because it's federally owned land. However, we'd rather it be blank open space than a mining operation opens up right next door, or some urban sprawl happens right next to us and then fences us in, and now it's totally out of the question into the future.
Yeah.
And maybe in the case of mining, causes some real adverse conditions for them living next door to it, to whatever ends up going on there. And so I thought that was a great point as well. And I am 99.99 repeating percent never in favor of selling public land, other than the very rare circumstances that we just laid out. And in this case, I fear that, especially when you couple this separate issue with a lot of the other things that this current administration has talked about, with more logging, more drilling, more mining, it smells awful greedy to me. And I understand the idea of you want to expand these urban population centers. You want to be able to do that. I understand that. You want to have more economy and all that. That I can't fault anybody for that. The idea of, hey, we need more reservoirs so that people can live where there's actually not resources to support them. Once again, go back and read The Worst Hard Time by Timothy Egan, and you can learn about living in this place called no man's land. And when the whole grid is set up on fossil fuel and cat machinery carving out holes in the ground so you can collect enough desert rainwater, it sounds like a pretty fragile existence in a world that's going to now be flooded with consumerism like we do everywhere else in the country. And so I don't know that it's a justifiable enough reason there. And we have a lot of places around our country. You can drive to pretty much every city and see abandoned lots, old housing projects, or businesses that have gone out, and and it gets landlocked by other stuff, and no one ever uses it. How we find a way to start developing that stuff before we start, licking our lips over the blank spaces on the map. And I do want to shout out a couple of people who I believe were on this committee. Or no, one of them was on the committee. That would be Jeff Hurd. He's a representative from Colorado, and he broke away from the majority, his party, which was the majority voice behind this. He was the single Republican to not vote in favor of this sale. And then,
did he give a reason why?
No, I don't know I can assume what his reason is.
I didn't know if he had like a public statement about it, but
he might, but I did not see it. And then Representative Ryan Zinke has also come out publicly and said he is not in favor of this. And he is a rep from Montana, a Republican rep from Montana, and then a Republican senator from Montana, Steve Daines, has also spoken out against what the vast majority of his party has stated they'd be in favor of. And you know what? That takes guts to do that, and that's a commitment to what you believe in. And so I think that's great. I personally am not in favor of this case of selling these acres. I think it's a dangerous slippery slope to get on, and I don't think that the slippery slope is always a fallacy. In fact, I think it oftentimes isn't. And so I'm concerned about it. I know a lot of our listeners probably are, and hopefully it motivates us all to be in contact with our local reps in our states and say, hey, please don't vote in favor of this if it comes to a vote. And with your senators as well.
So Ken and I were actually talking about this over the weekend, and we don't have any answers, but we want to do something. So here's what we're doing. We've been asked with many, many emails over the past, I don't know, maybe year and a half, when people started listening to us, I guess, about merch. We haven't really ever done it.
We do some soul searching on merch, to be honest with you.
And we are anti-consumerism, and merch feels like consumerism. Now, my wife and I at the coffee shop, we've done merch, and that has really opened my eyes in a good way to you can do it well. You can do it well, but you got to pay for it. It's just not cheap. You're not going to get a $15 shirt and do merch well. So we were talking as a team, and we're going to release a line of merch. I'm not promising we'll do it again in the future. I don't know. We are releasing a single line of merch, and half of all the profits, at least half of all the profits, will go to Backcountry Hunters and Anglers, BHA. We're going to donate it to them because we feel like they do a really, really good job fighting for conservation. Yeah,
they're on the front lines defending public land.
And they not only have a voice with the public, but they have a pretty strong voice in Washington. They've got influence there. So we're going to be donating. So if that is something that you would be interested in, if you'd be interested in our merch and want to overlap with helping with conservation and specifically this public lands issue, then you could check it out. Here's how we're going to do it. We're going to do pre-orders. So you're going to go on there. You're going to pay for it like it's going to be shipped to your house tomorrow. Because usually if you're buying seed on our website, we're shipping the next day or maybe the day after that. You're going to order it just like that, but we're actually going to ship it all the first week of July. So that's when it's going to go out. It's going to go in about 6 weeks from now. We're going to get it. It's going to be open to pre-order for 3 weeks. And then we're going to have 3 weeks to get the shirts in-house, and then we're going to get them out to you. We're doing shirts, 2 shirts, 1 sweatshirt, and a couple hat options. But again, we're trying to move in a direction that is positive for conservation, for this public land. We wanted to do something a little more. We totally believe that conservation happens one mine at a time, but by golly, those mines need to get behind and put some money into it, and including us. And so that's what we want to do here. We're excited. You guys can see the designs. If you were listening to this, the website went live at 5 a.m. Wednesday, the 21st, so you can go and check it out. It's just on our website. It says merch for conservation, and you guys can pre-order there. It's gonna look like you're ordering it, and I'm sorry, the website is very limiting just because of the way our website's set up, so we don't have a pre-order section, but we will ship it first week of July, then I'll get to you shortly after that. But that's what we want to do for it.
Yeah.
So Riley's over there like bug-eyed, like, I guess I'm shipping all those.
I'm sweating bullets.
So here's what we do. You need to make Riley's job terrible and order so many shirts that for a week he and I are just in the office as he's cussing me out because we're doing it all.
If you order a lot of shirts, I'll be very thankful for conservation, and the rest will keep between Nicholas and I in the office.
But, man. Cool. Do you have any thoughts on the public land, Riley?
Well, I see both sides. I think the local example you gave, it takes a lot of nuance and like you said, years to look at a site to say, I want to take this, whatever it is, 400-acre parcel or less, and revert it back to local control. Mm-hmm. But I also worry that when we're talking about 400,000 acres, we're starting to get lost in the weeds. No one's, even if there's oversight panels, how can you go through all of that and truly not miss out?
And to be clear, there's no indication that this is, as best as I can understand it, that like the states are buying this. Like they're going to open it up to whoever. So you may never set a foot on it ever again as an American citizen if it's bought by private entity.
Almost never. I mean, you and I got something donated to them, and they've been for the Irvine Prairie, and they've been yelling it from the rooftops because that doesn't happen hardly ever. You know. So
I would say more than likely, the tinfoil hat part of me would say that some companies have been looking at this land for a long time and saying, man, if only. If only.
And have probably been lobbying for this exact action. And I should add in there that one of the reasons that has been stated for this is to help contribute to paying off the federal deficit. And Nick and I did some numbers crunching this morning. If we sold every single acre that the United States owns for $5,000 an acre, which we felt was a pretty fair price. Some will be more. A lot of it will be less. But for $5,000 an acre, you would come up with just over $3 trillion.
Yeah, you'd cover about 7% of the national debt.
Yeah. And what would you have left to show for it after?
Not a great dent.
Yeah. You'll hear more about it with the interview we did with Aaron Warburton, which was a great interview. Highly recommend that one. But we go deeper into the public land and the money, and I think our national debt is like a crisis. Like
absolutely,
conservation and national debt to me are the two biggest crises in the United States, besides maybe like our food health. But it's all related. I don't believe that we need to sell off assets to pay that off, because our problem is not that we had a war and now we have to pay for that war. Our problem is we spend so much money every year that it grows every year, right? So we got to quit the spending. I don't think selling the land would be a terrible solution to this.
Yeah, it's like cutting off your leg to lose weight.
Yeah, that's a great way to say it.
Not an effective way to do it.
Oh man. Well, if you want a question answered, sorry we didn't get to it today. We're 50 minutes in, no question answered. social@theprairiefarm.com. Don't forget we give out seed for it, and merch for conservation being dropped May 21st. Highly recommend looking at it. If you hate the design, don't say anything. My wife designed most of it. So, all right. We all agree right now, all listeners, we're going to not say anything.
And nobody tells his wife that Nick just blew that secret on the podcast right now.
No, she made our butterfly like from the beginning.
Yes. Our logo.
She's super talented. She was like, oh, here, and like literally like 6 minutes, like drew that thing, was like, here, hand me the piece of paper, and it was on college ruled notebook paper, and I had to go out and like cut out all the lines, and, like edit it all out. But yeah, she's awesome. Love that lady. We really, really appreciate you guys, and we will talk to you again next time.